Good morning, everybody. This is the Personal Playlist Podcast, fondly referred to as the P3 on Voice Ed Radio. I'm Noah Daniel.
Music is a world within itself, with a language we all understand.
I am so excited to have Jay Dubois here on the Personal Playlist Podcast. Jay is an energetic primary junior teacher and instructional coach in the Thames Valley DSB. He's interested in cross-curricular, community-based learning and using technology to uncover and document curriculum in real, authentic circumstances. He co-led an Ontario Ministry of Education's TLLP Action Research Program, the members of the Listen Louder, Amplifying Student Voice with Technology and Mathematics project team. Last year, he embraced the power of one-to-one through iPads and had a blast transitioning his students from consumers into content creators with authentic learning experiences that connected with the real world. Jay is a Google Certified Innovator and Educator. He was recently accepted into the Google Certified Innovator Academy and launched an education project that looks to turn up teacher voices to 11 and make teacher-to-teacher sharing contagious by leveraging YouTube, Google Hangouts, and a nominate-forward strategy. He's passionate about rubrics and enjoys introducing teachers to the power of using self-assessed single-point rubrics in honoring student voice in the assessment cycle. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Hey, Noah, what a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. We first met actually through On Ed Chat, and we met in person for the first time at TEDx, and then we actually got to meet in person again at EdTech Camp for YRDSB. So it's been a privilege knowing you, and I'm so happy that you're on the show.
No, it's great, and it's been great to see this podcast grow as well. As I was scrolling through just a huge amount of episodes that you've created over the past bit of time. So it's hopefully you're having fun because time sure seems to fly, doesn't it?
It does fly, and I'm having so much fun. Like, the thing about this show is, though, even though the format is always the same, every person brings a new energy and a new experience and, of course, a new story. So tell me a little bit about your story preparing for the Personal Playlist Podcast.
Well, it's interesting, and I think this is a bit of a theme. I'm certainly not the first person to suggest that being approached by you is it's such an honor to kind of just be able to chat with someone outside of the school day and talk education and all this good teacher talk stuff. But when you pair that with, can you please select 3 songs that frame your life? It turns into a daunting piece of homework. Although a homework that you love to do, it was a lot of fun, but I've been thinking about this for almost half of a year. And wow. I think it wasn't just until 2 days ago where I was finally able to nail down these songs, because music's just such a part of my life, like everyone's life. It is truly that soundtrack. So what a fantastic reflective experience it's been.
I'm so glad that it was fantastic. And it's funny because, I always give lead time when my students do it, but they've never had 6 months. So I'm happy that you got to marinate on the idea and you feel good about your choices and you're here. So let's start with your nostalgic song. The goal of the show is that we share 3 songs, and the first one is about going back. So it's a song that's supposed to represent something from your past, but what's so funny is nostalgia is actually in the first line of the song. So tell us a little bit about why you chose it.
Yeah, so this song's by a great Canadian rock band called Big Wreck, and it's actually just entitled That Song. And the first line goes, "So I always get nostalgic with that song." And it's funny, I've been thinking about using a song from this band for a long time, and it wasn't until I actually hit play, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It uses the word nostalgia. Like, this is meant to be.
Yeah.
And when it comes to a nostalgia song, like, I think back to my high school experience, and I had a really diverse playlist back then, but it's a different place where I wasn't exactly making that well known, right? Like what you're listening to, like you were a fear of being judged for, the types of bands you're into back then. That was the early 90s. And I think about kids now where the more diverse your playlist, I mean, that kind of gets you extra kudos. So, I kind of wish I could try that high school thing again. And kids have, they're focused more on songs and albums, but they're pulling from all over the place. And when indie rock got started, and there's all sorts of ways that people experience music now that's different. But anyways, when I kind of go back to listening to this, it was just when university was getting started, and I am a musician. I love playing a lot of instruments, and I have a terrible memory for lyrics, however. So more for me, I remember sounds over meaning. It's the way the songs make me feel from a melodic perspective. So I think this song just sounds great. Every time I hear it, it makes me happy. It really captures Canadian rock from the 90s. And again, like that was sort of like like your teen years, your early 20s and those formative years, that music just sticks, right? You hear a song and it transports me back to that time in my life. And, I'd be blowing a lot of my money at Sam the Record Man, just picking up CD after CD. The lead singer and guitarist, his name's Ian Thornley, and I consider him to almost be the Canadian Chris Cornell, if you know who Chris Cornell is, of course.
Yes, I do.
In my mind. And the way this guy plays guitar and sings, it's just something to behold. So I saw them live with my then girlfriend and now wife.
Was he as troubled? Oh.
Not as troubled. Not as troubled. Grumpy, but not as troubled. But I saw them live with my wife back when she was at Laurier. I was at University of Waterloo, and they played a club called The Turret. And I swear the floor was going to cave in. Just so many people crammed in there, and the music was so loud. And I've seen them a few times since, and do you know what? Like they still rock. So my favorite connection to this song. Sorry, long stories.
No, I like this so much.
My favorite connection to the song. I was actually asked to play bass in a band with my brother-in-law, and not a cool band. It was my brother-in-law went to med school at Western. And every year they'd hold a huge variety show, and a couple hundred people would go and they'd do skits, but they always had a band for intermission. So he was the lead singer of this band, and they didn't have a bass player. It's not like I was a med student, but they let me fill in. So I learned 8 songs in a few weeks, and it was actually at the Alt House Auditorium. So here in London, Alt House is the Faculty of Education's education building. So that's where I went to Teachers College. So it's really cool.
I went to Western, but not for for the faculty, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it was neat. So to go back, actually my first year of teaching, to go back and be playing bass on that stage was kind of cool. And my favorite song of the night, we actually played that song by Big Wreck. And so now I jam to it with my son. He's a 10-year-old, and he's picked up the guitar, and it's a song he loves too. So yeah, it's my nostalgia pick for sure.
Well, it's a nostalgia that keeps on giving. Those are fantastic stories. So let's hear it. That song by Canadian rock band Big Wreck. It's a great song, and it feels like a soundtrack, like to a film. Like I can just see the scene playing out. I don't know why in my head. What an amazing thing to play with your son. I can't imagine doing that.
It's pretty cool. And, it's funny with kids. You don't want them to become a mini-me, but just kind of through osmosis, you see your children kind of reflecting a lot of what your own personal interests are. So it's funny because he takes a lot of music lessons, and when it's Christmas concert time, he always asks if he can play classic rock instead. So at his Christmas concert this year, he played Closer to the Heart by Rush with the solo and everything as a 10-year-old. And all these dads are coming up to me afterwards saying, that was so cool. Because everyone else is, like playing Jingle Bells on the piano. And my son's like, let's crank it. Let's turn it up to 11, right?
Nice.
So it's been a big joy for me.
Yeah, like you don't want to make mini-me's, but at the same time, there are things you want to impart on your children, pieces of yourself. And it feels wonderful when it's something that they gravitate to and you know that it's theirs as well as yours.
Absolutely.
Okay, well let's talk about, the song that really reflects who you are as a person and the song that, is your identity song. So you chose a song that that we also are going to play a different version of. Tell me a little bit about why this song, why this guy.
Yeah, so it's another Canadian artist, and his name is Danny Michel, and the song is called "Nobody Rules You." And I love the story to this song, and it's neat because Noah, you're part of this story. So you mentioned earlier the TEDx education talks happening in Kitchener. I think that was back in the fall of 2017, and I took a road trip with some teachers from Thames Valley to go see, all these inspirational speakers talking about education. And
That was awesome.
Yeah, like a huge venue, so much energy, like in the space. And then eventually, this guy comes out with a guitar and a huge screen behind him. He starts sharing this story on how, as an artist, he was invited to go on this kind of like adventure ship tour, and Commander Hadfield was one of the people on the boat, and he was invited to go and just create. So they're on this ancient, or like this huge, like Russian ship. It's this icebreaker.
This
going
icebreaker,
through the
yeah.
Arctic, right? And he said he wrote a full album's worth of songs while coasting through glaciers and just experiencing this world that so few humans get the chance to actually see in person. So anyways, he played a few songs, but the one that stuck with me was called "Nobody Rules You," and it was just him with his solo guitar and like great voice. But again, like I said, like melody pulls me in first, and there was just something in the way. Like I had to go home and learn how to play that song, and not that I can do it justice, but I had to grab my guitar. But then I started tuning into what he was actually singing about. And I remember being there in the audience, and it just kind of one of those songs where you could have 1,000 people not make a sound, and they're just hanging on every word. For me, it felt like that kind of moment with that song. And I love the message. So some of his lyrics around it, like be who you want to be, love who you want to love. Don't let them hold you down. They don't make the rules. Nobody rules me, or nobody rules you, rather. So like it spoke to me as a teacher, but also as a dad too. So like somebody needs to be the person who sells 1 million records. Somebody needs to be the person who invents something magical. So kids might as well believe it could be them. And I want kids to be dreamers, right? And we lose that so early in life. We lose that optimism and that sense of whimsy. So I like to pull in these themes in my classroom as much as possible, and certainly with my son and my daughter. Just always questioning them. Well, like, why are you shutting yourself down there? Why are you saying no to that? Like that opportunity is there. Someone has to take it. If you feel it, go for it. It has to be someone. So I just really loved like the nobody rules you piece. So I knew I wanted to do something with my grade 3 class around it. And we'd recently finished a 5-day forest school. So in our board, they opened up applications, and you could post how you teach cross-curricularly over 5 days in a forest and truly treat it as a real extension of your classroom. So using all of the curriculum, and I put in this massive application and won the opportunity. So we truly like did everything with our iPads and documenting the whole magical experience. We owned that forest for a week in the fall. And it was all about stewardship and conservationism and documenting our experience to share forward, and then have a sharing night and take our learning and be able to share those documentations. There are videos of their chipmunk sounds and capturing, tree frogs, and everything was photographed and filmed with macro lenses. So it's just like a magical week. Like there will never be a week as a teacher that will top that. So as we came out of this experience, the song stuck with me, and like, do you know what? I want to make like kind of a video showcasing some of the kids' work. What an amazing song that could be the soundtrack to the showcase video, because no one rules you, right? Like thinking about the wildness and appreciating all that the land gives us was a big focus that week. So that here we go. Let's do a cover. So we were creating that video, and we were covering Danny's song, and there's something really interesting about kids singing grown-up songs that almost give them a haunted feel. I remember listening to Alan Cross, that amazing podcaster, DJ from Toronto, and he's just like a walking music encyclopedia. And one of his nights, he talked about outsider music, where you take performers who don't fit the mold of what that song's originally intended for, and you perform this sort of thing. And I found that really interesting. So in my classes, we've always covered Bowie and Fleetwood Mac and songs that have kind of sad themes. And you're thinking, gosh, maybe that's a bit much for 8-year-olds. But if you've taught kids in primary, junior, like their empathy is through the roof, and they really attach to these messages, and they have such a unique vision of what those lyrics can mean. They don't have the baggage that we have as grown-ups and that background knowledge. So their understanding is really pure. It was always kind of neat. And what I'd do is have them then do stop motion animation to kind of showcase what the lyrics meant. And we put all our stop motion animations together and record this music video, and then actually cut a cover and share this in the gym in front of the whole school or something like that. And it's just one of those powerful experiences I'll always do as a teacher now. So this Danny Michel song was the one we wanted to cover. The song stuck, and it has a slightly haunted feel, but it's cut straight from my classroom floor. Just me, an acoustic guitar, a snowball mic, and 20 kids sitting as closely as they can on the carpet with the lyrics up on the smart board, and us just trying our best to do it justice. And what was really cool afterwards, I tweeted out the video and I tagged in Danny Michel, and he was gracious enough to tweet back some praise, and my students were just awestruck, right? Like, what an experience from beginning to end for them.
So can we add the video to the blog post? Because I want to play that song right now.
Do you know what? It's the video is tricky because my kids are in it, the students are in it, so that's one of the things we can't share. So I know there's an original that he has that I know you might link to on YouTube for me, but the audio you're going to hear is just kind of our shortened cover, and trying our best to do it justice. But thanks, Danny Michel, because it was such an inspiring night, and it fed forward into my classroom.
That Danny Michel's red guitar matches the same thing that was on Pete Seeger's banjo, although Pete Seeger's passed away. And I'm getting the same folk feel from all of this and the work that you're doing. It said, "This machine surrounds hate and forces it to surrender." And it made me think of that because of the purity. And I have taught junior, and I understand, if they ruled the world would be a perfect place, except people will tattle on each other too much. That's really the essence of it. So I need to hear this song. What an incredible collaboration. And it must be something that's just resonated with them continually. I can't imagine that won't be one of the greatest memories of their school experience, Jay, but let's play it.
Oh, I hope so.
nobody rules you, but you guys rule for doing that. That is wild. What a lovely song.
Do you know what? It's funny. I'm not an emotional person in any kind of way, but there's something about that. It just the power of music, right? Like that was over a year ago, but it just transports you. I'm in this darkened classroom. I can see the faces, right? It's just amazing how music has that power, and it's a cool message, and it's a message I need to continue to tell myself, right? So don't let them hold you down. Like the larger them, it's tricky, but just that motivational piece where I don't want it to be cheesy. I'm not into like cheesy music, but you do need that kind of little anthem for yourself and give yourself permission to like take risks. And when I don't take risks in the classroom, I feel very bored and quite stifled. I need to do something that's different. And every time I try something that I'm not sure is going to work out, I'm always thankful that I gave it a go, because those are usually the experiences that stick out the most.
Well, good for you, because I mean, I feel similarly that way in terms of, chasing big dreams and being okay if you kind of land not where you planned, but rolling with the learning regardless. And I think that, those kinds of situations and those educators who model that risk taking become some of our greatest mentors in our learning. But sometimes when we want to shout and we can't shout, or we can't love who we want to love, we need a song that can, bring us up. So you kind of changed the descriptor for this third song. Tell us a little bit about why that's your choice.
Yeah, so this song is called Up, 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 and it's a band called Givers. And I to be honest, I don't have a lot of history around this band. It truly was one of the songs where I quickly downloaded the single and just kind of fell in love. But I was just watching Jimmy Fallon years ago, and I love how he brings on some indie rock bands. I'm like, who are these guys? And they're just so much fun. And like the song is kind of a rare, positive looking like jam in a lot of ways. And it really just continues to build to like a frenetic, spacey rock spaz out at the end. So there's lots going on in it, but it just touches on so many genres. And I mentioned earlier about like, having that diverse playlist, and there's very few genres that I can't connect to. And this one seems to throw in 3 or 4 somehow, and it just all works. So I kind of love that. And the parts come together to make a really distinctly uplifting kind of jam. And, and not to make too many teacher parallels here, but like it throws influences together. And, I want my kids to be in classrooms where teachers are taking things from the real world, throwing them together and talking about influence and giving kids choice. I want my own children to be in a place where like they're creating and there's no one right way. And the teacher is a person who has that teacher is an interesting person who does things outside of the school, and they're sharing parts of their life, like to be that inspirational person and that mentor teacher, and that teacher eventually remember because they did great things in a classroom, but you also knew they're an interesting person, right? So I like mashing up all kinds of things at once in my classroom, and this song kind of represents that.
There are 2 things that you got me thinking about. Like one of the things I loved the most in the evolution of Bloom's taxonomy was the realization that synthesis was not the pinnacle, but creativity. And that idea of what creativity really is as that optimal synthesis of the symphony of all the different pieces coming together to create something totally new. And that's really what music does. So when you have a piece like this that is eclectic and that comes from a different space, and there's lots of different music that you can hear, I think it is a really good metaphor for what we're trying to do in the classroom. And in many ways, what we're trying to do outside the classroom to inform and infuse back into the classroom and have that, design cycle as a human being, because it's so hard to separate that from being the teacher that you are. So let's hear the song. It's featured in the video game FIFA 12, which I was surprised by, but video games throw in some interesting songs sometimes. So here it is.
Oh, we up for the glow show. Yeah, we down here on the ground. Yeah, we up above love. Yeah, we up in the clouds. Yeah, we up. Yeah, we up. Yeah, we up. Yeah, we up.
Wow, that was fun. I want to go back to a little bit of the work that you're doing, because you sent me a link to Create, Explore, Digitize, Reflect. And I want to understand that as we share it out with people, not just through the audio, but through the blog post that'll come out on Tuesday. Tell me a little bit more about that.
It was just kind of a mantra in my one bulletin board at the front of my classroom. I always, like in the last few years, just had 5 words, and it was, create, explore, digitize, reflect, and connect. And to me, that really encapsulated how I wanted learning to look in my classroom and outside of my classroom too, because we did a lot of community-based learning. And it's interesting right now. We're in a tricky space where, the problems that screens have for us as humans, and not just kids, but the screen time issue. But I always kind of went back and thought, you know what? I have access to one-on-one iPads. I had to do a lot of, grant writing to get there. How can I use this opportunity, this unique opportunity with kids, to kind of show that, tech can be used in so many positive ways as long as it's involved with creating, not just for consuming. So we had a rule where, we're creating and exploring and digitizing things. We were never consuming things that were made by other people. So it was just all about video and sound and creating with apps and sharing with audience in mind all the time. Because as far as I'm concerned, if kids are working on something and it just kind of goes in a duotang, it has an audience of 1 maybe, right, and it's sent home to parents like me in June, and they just go right into the recycle bin because that work, that opportunity to share what the kid's doing has already been long bypassed. So the assessment that goes with that, it's not impactful at that point. So we're always thinking about audience and creating things on the fly and defronting the room and using Apple TV and the kids' work and the kids' research and the kids' creations really drove what our conversations were during the day. And the reflect and connect piece is probably the most important part of what our daily process looked like. And we did, I did a gradeless classroom last year where we just use single point reflective rubrics where they're always looking at criteria. They could choose whatever tools they wanted to produce X, Y, Z, but they always had to reflect on why that tool made the most sense for them, how they did on, the certain criteria, a goal they'd set for themselves, plus something they're proud of. So they really got used to that script of all of us can improve at something, but all of us did something well. And what that looks like from student to student is completely different. And that's what makes a classroom an interesting place. So yeah, that was basically our mantra, right? Let's create things. Let's kind of show that tech can be used for good, and because it's powerful when it's used properly. And let's make sure that we're reflective learners, and we're not focused on a grade. We're focused on an experience and getting better.
Wow. Well, this is Jay Dubois. If you want to get in touch with him, you can find him on Twitter at Jay_Dubois. Is there anything else you want to add before I play you out, Jay?
Do you know what? I just want to say thanks. And you know what? Like we mentioned earlier, that TEDx experience was the first time I saw you face to face. And right away, you kind of, Jay's over there, and you come over with a big hug. Like your warmth and your approachability is huge, and it speaks to why you're having all these exciting ventures go so positively. Right. So thanks for paying it forward.
That's so nice. I'm a hugger. So.
But, that made my night.
That's so cool. I'm happy that you are here. I'm happy that you're part of the OEM Connect team, and I look forward to learning a lot more from you. Have a fantastic day. Thank you for joining us on the P3, the Personal Playlist Podcast. I'm Noah Daniel. This is Voice Ed Radio, and I hope you have a fantastic day.